Hello, everybody. Thank you for being back. My name is Paola Guthrie. I am Pao from Creating Purpose with Pao, and I want to welcome you to the Spanglish World Network and Heart Network on Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download Single TV app on the respective app stores. When you download it, please, rate it, give us a comment, let us know how we're doing our job. Single TV is totally free. You can find it in Google Chromecast, in Amazon Fire TV Stick, and Roku Stick, and all smart TVs from 2016 and forward. I'm so excited today that we have a beautiful guest. Her name is Tammy Tantilla. She is a relationship coach, personal coach, business coach with 19 years of experience training different types of leaders, at different levels. And she's also a master leader for Robbins International. And today I welcome her to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So please share about you, your profession, so that the audience get to know you better.
Well, thank you. So I, my thing is relationships, and many years ago I was in a very unfulfilling relationship, and it really sucked. And I decided that I never wanted to be in a relationship like that again. I wanted to be in a relationship. I just didn't want to be in that kind of a relationship. So that started my journey of like learning what I really wanted in relationship, what I didn't want, what my musts were, my must nevers. Like I really started to figure out what that was. And the great piece of that is I figured that out, and I now have the relationship that I really, really want in my life. And so I'm really grateful that I get to have that. And what it allows is that my husband and I, we do relationship coaching. So we help other couples be able to have relationships that really thrive and have it be what they want. So I started my coaching, actually doing coaching about 28 years ago. And I have coached tens of thousands of people. And I do, as she said, I do business coaching, individual, couples coaching, group coaching, like all those different things. And I do that because I love coaching. And I'm always looking for new information, new things that I can use in my own relationship, some really golden nuggets. And then I use them in my coaching as well. So I'm always looking for that. And I've been on an interesting journey. Like I've studied and certified in different things like neuro-linguistic programming, neuroassociative conditioning, neurocoding. I've done, DISC. I've done spiral dynamics. I've done talent dynamics. I've studied with Tony Robbins. I've studied with Alison Armstrong and Jack Canfield and Byron. Like the list goes on and on and on. And it's because I want to always make sure that I have whatever my clients, myself included, whatever we're going to need, I'm going to make sure that whatever it takes, I'm going to get them where they need to go. So all that to say that I love coaching and I love relationship coaching.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes. And we need it so much. It's like we need the strategies, Tammy, because as a wife and as a mom, I get trapped into that routine of being a mom more than a wife most of the time. And we team up, in our marriage, and it's like, okay, but still we get involved into our family, which is good, because we're showing our kids that we care, that we're trying, we focus on the education. Sometimes we forget about the relationship. We think, okay, it is a commitment. Yes. And sometimes we put a pause into that, nurturing the relationship at a higher level where we still feel that strong connection of, looking at him and it's like, oh, it's like he looks handsome, or, getting that giggle sensation. Sometimes we know that because we get busy in our everyday. So today is like, I'm enjoying this conversation just right now because we're going to deliver information for those couples out there that may need awakening, or is like, oh, maybe I need to start nurturing my marriage better so that we can go back to the strong connection, looking at them and smiling instead of like, oh.
I totally agree. So often I find when life gets busy with either like work and kids and all the different things that the demands that we have, there's a part of us that allows our relationship to kind of get on the back burner. There's almost a feeling like, well, they're kind of always there. So I'm just going to trust they'll always be there, and I'm going to put my focus out here. And we kind of get away from like, really, that's one of our core things, that when that's really working, everything else out there goes so much better. It just, everything seems to be so much better when we make sure that that's a priority. So
yeah. So let's remember that. Oh, to our beautiful audience, let's remember that when our relationship with our significant other, it's in good shape, like in a good connection, strong connection, you're still smiling and giggling, then we know that everything else, it's doable. The challenging of parenting, the challenging of work are doable because you're like, your team is it's strong. So yes. So okay, so some of our young viewers are in their like are 18 years old, and they are curious to know what's the purpose of dating.
well, that is a great question to ask for when you're in that process of dating, for sure. And from my belief is what's great about dating is to learn what you want and what you don't want. And again, the musts and nevers, we want to make sure that we know what those are. I'll give you an example. So maybe they must love family, but they must never be someone who yells, right? Or they must love kids, but they must never be a heavy drinker. Like, I'm just giving some like examples. Like, we want to know what those things are going into like our whole dating process, where we're like looking at people and noticing and seeing what shows up. One of the things that I think is really important to do when we're dating is to notice if our values are in alignment. And it's not that they have to be the same, they just need to be in alignment so it doesn't create conflict. So when when our values are not in alignment, then that can definitely, it causes so much stress later on. And so when we look at that up front, when we're looking for that, then we know if this is a person that's going to like really gel with us when things get rough and tough, then we know that we can come back to our values, the things that are important to us. And we also talk about, it's a great opportunity. I talk about love languages. So your viewers may or may not be aware, there's a quiz that you can take. It's about love languages. And there's basically 5 love languages. And what we want to do is discover what our own love language is, and then the person that we're dating to see what their love language is, and start to notice about what we like to have and what we want to make sure that we're giving as well. So we give whatever their love language is. An example would be like, here's what can happen. She may be complaining and she may say, you know what? He never even gives me a card. Like, how do I even know how he feels? Like, he never even tells me. Like, I never get a card. I never get anything. And he may respond with, how could you not know that I love you? Like, I took out the garbage. I gave you a foot rub. Like, I did all these things for you. And how could you not know how I feel? So it creates some like confusion when we don't know what those love languages are, and we think we're speaking the same language, but we're actually speaking a different language. So for me, the dating process is a lot about discovery. I find I discover a lot about myself in that process. And a great way to learn more about the person that you're dating is, it's called, Pat Allen talks about it, it's called the 4 seasons. So it's going through the 4 seasons. So that would be winter, spring, summer, fall, right? And you do that with a person because each of those seasons brings different opportunities and challenges. There's different holidays, different traditions, different like how people respond to cold and warm. I mean, seem like they're simple things, but sometimes you'll notice that people show up differently as they go throughout those times. And so as we go through the 4 seasons, we know how a person shows up in all these different scenarios and environments. It's like, oh my gosh, that's how you feel about Christmas, or oh, that's what you do at Thanksgiving, or right, we get to understand what their model, how they see the world from what their life is like. For a lot of teens, dating is like, it's to have fun, and it's to learn what you want and don't want in relationships. So
I
for me,
love it.
it's the discovery process.
Good. Yes. And the five languages is physical touch. There's people that they have to feel the hug. They have to feel that pat on the back to feel that cup of love. Where it's like, oh, they love me. Like to make them feel like they love that you're loving on them is like they have to feel that physical touch. The second one is quality of time. Like if you're spending quality of time with your significant other is whenever you're filling up the love cup. And then we have active service whenever we do things for other people. Words of affirmation, they're probably very auditory, that they like to hear, you're doing a good job, I'm proud of you, thank you for being here, thanks for your support. And the fifth one is gifts. It don't have to be expensive gifts, but there's people that like that, like if you write a note and they're like, oh, they thought of me, that's there's just five different ways of how to fill the cup with love that speaks to the language of love. What are your two main love language?
So I'm really lucky in a funny way. So just a really quick story about that. I used to think my love language was gifts because it was the language that I used to describe everything. If someone did something kind for me, I'd be like, oh, thank you for this gift. Or someone gave me a back rub, I'm like, thank you for this gift. So I thought my love language was gifts because it's what I called it. But my top two love languages are acts of service. That's why all those things that people were doing for me, right? I saw as gifts. And my second one is physical touch. And I sometimes think that can be kind of interesting in relationships because some people say, oh, in my relationship, it's physical touch. But it's also great to just notice if it's actually physical touch in the world. And what I mean by that is if you say, well, when someone comes and gives you a hug, and I say that often to guys, I'll say, so if a guy comes up and gives you a hug, is that okay? And some guys are like, yeah, I really feel like they appreciate me. Others are like, oh, heck no, back off. Right?
Personal space.
Personal space, right? And so it's great to notice where that physical touch actually is and what that means in your relationship. Because every language has a dialect, right? So it's like, for me, if like acts of service, like, okay, you just mentioned about gifts. They don't have to be expensive. For some people, it's like how they receive the gift or what it looks like makes a difference. For some, it's like, I have to see them regularly. I have to have a gift from you every day. Other people, it's like, you brought me roses, like I'm good, right? Like I get that you love me. So it kind of depends on what it is, and you really want to find out what those are for them. So it's a great question, like you just asked me, right? It's like, ask them, so if you're acts of service, how would you know, like what would that look like for you? Like tell me, share with me some ideas of what that would sound like, look like, feel like, whatever for you, so that you can make sure that you're matching what it is, because we often perceive it different from ourselves. Right?
And now that you said that, is like something that pops to my mind is like sometimes we as women, and I'm going to include myself here, you want your significant other to know what you want. And it's like how silly I was, back then when it was like, well, he should know me. It's like, no, it's like it's a journey. You're getting to know each other as the year passes by. So if we can have an open communication and be like, hey, I would like for our marriage to get better, get stronger. So this is what I would like, this is what it looks like to me, a stronger marriage. What does it look like to you? And then find the common ground for both to work towards that stronger relationship. But now that you're mentioning that, it's like, yeah, I don't know if, who out there is expecting for that significant other to know everything about the other side, because it's like they're guessing,
It's kind of funny. I've often heard that we show up as our best on the first date in our relationship. It's that first date's when we put our best foot forward, right? I think that dating is a great opportunity for open communication. The more that we can openly communicate instead of trying to present our best selves all the time, because at some point that's not going to hold, right? So the more that we can be authentically communicating while we're dating, we're going to get to discover who that person really is. We're going to get to discover, they're going to get to know who we really are, right? So then it kind of supports that when, if they say, hey, I don't think we're a match, then it doesn't feel, it's like oh my gosh, I was doing this facade, I was pretending I was this person, or I was putting all this, pretense on, and now that's not who they like. Of course they don't, right? So it can kind of backfire, per se, when we try to present something different than who we really are. So it's a great opportunity to have great conversations. That's one of the things I love about dating, is all the great conversations you can have.
Be authentic. Yes. So some preteens and teenagers, and this is a question, it came to me from LinkedIn. It says some preteens and teenagers take rejection as a form of trauma. So how can they deal with rejection more effective in this way of a dating scenario?
I would guess that most of the people listening to this call or watching this right now is they've experienced some form of rejection, right? I think we all, not even teens, but we've all had that experience of what that feels like, and it doesn't feel good. It's yucky. I get it, right? It's not a great feeling, and I think it's important that we look at it for like what it really is. First of all, how we know how we feel is by what language we give it. The words that we use to describe our experience become our experience. So it's often said that nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it. And I'll give you an example of how that would look. So let's say there's a car accident between two cars, right? So there's two different drivers. They get in a car accident. Now the person driving, the event is the car accident. But the person driving the first car, well, they see it from their point of view, and that's what their meaning and experience of that is. But the person driving the other car has a totally different point of view and a different perspective, right? And the person standing on the corner watching the accident, now they have a different point of view as well. The event itself is still the car accident. Nothing's different. The facts are the same. It is what it is. But how all these different people view that experience becomes what they make that mean for themselves. And then they begin filtering through that. So if I think that the other driver was in fault, then I may be angry at them. If I feel like I was at fault and I'm feeling like that, right, then I'm going to come from that filter. So it's nothing really has any meaning but the meaning we give it. And a lot of people don't realize that we get to choose the meanings that we give things. So when we use the word, say, rejection, it's a word that we're choosing to label that experience with. And we just want to be cautious and aware that that's what that is. We can do whatever with that, right? So let's say, as we were talking earlier, right? Maybe you were putting on a facade and a person comes up and says, you know what? I just don't feel like we really mesh or connect. I just don't think we're a good match. Now, I could filter it, right? I could be in this car and I could say, oh my gosh, I am a terrible person. I will never be in a relationship. I'm always going to be alone. Oh my gosh, that's what this means. That's the meaning from this car seat that I've chosen to give what's happened. But the other person, sitting in a different car seat could go, oh, wow, so good to know that now so that I don't invest any more time there, right? If we're not a match, I'm glad I get to kind of move on, right? Or, wow, the amount of courage it must have taken to say something like that. Wow, I'm kind of impressed that they had the courage to, know what they want and actually speak what their truth is. Another perspective, right? So there can be different perspectives. Someone might say, well, this is a great opportunity for me to learn something. I wonder what I'm supposed to learn from this. If life's happening for me, which is one of my core beliefs, if life's happening for me, then this must be for my better good. And it would be really smart for me to figure out, what do I need to learn from this that's positive, that I can take forward and use in my life. So rejection, as uncomfortable as it can feel, right? And I appreciate that we need to spend time mourning that loss. For some of us, right, if we've been dating for a week, feels different than if we've been dating for 6 months, right? So it can feel like more of a sense of loss, but sometimes it's great to just notice what the loss is. Is it that I'm really missing this person? Is it that I'm missing being in a relationship and being the center of attention for someone? Like, what is it that I'm really missing, right? That's making me feel the way that I feel. And it's okay to miss and grieve that, but it's how long we choose to do that with that. So it's how we choose to interpret what that means and how we choose to use that information. So it doesn't need to feel like trauma. I mean, there's sometimes when we go there, it's because we're feeling a lack of significance. We're feeling not as important because someone just told us no, right? And it doesn't feel great. So we're trying to get that need met of feeling important and significance by having a big challenge, a big situation, a big rejection that feels kind of traumatic, right? So there's better ways. And sometimes it's really looking and asking ourselves better questions. It's evaluating what's really going on. It's discovering, like, what do I really need to learn from this? And choosing the meaning that you're going to give that. So I think that could be helpful for some teens, preteens, young adults, senior citizens, like, all of us, right?
All of us.
All of us, to just remember, it's like, if life's happening for us, what's the gift in this?
I love it. Yes. And, it's one of my questions to go to. It's like, okay, what meaning am I giving to this situation when it's uncomfortable? It doesn't have to be always a rejection, but it's like whenever you feel uncomfortable, when you are, in a situation, you're like, oh, how do I react to this? Then the question is like, okay, this is happening for me. How can I show my strength, my love, my faith, my compassion, whatever your core values are, bring them to this situation and ask yourself, okay, how can I learn from this? This is happening for me. So how can I turn it around where I get to grow from this experience? And it might stink because it hurts, it's a tough situation. But if you're seeking growth, if you're seeking love, if you're seeking to become a better person, then you'll find the way. But I love what you're sharing with us because, it's the interpretation that we give to each situation that sometimes we create our own storm, our own pain, our own suffering whenever we choose a negative meaning, like something, it's because I'm not enough, it's because, I'm not skinny enough, or probably, it's like, I'm not educated enough. Then your beautiful brain begins to play tricks because it's trying to give you the answer. And that takes us to another show probably. But for the meaning of this question is like rejection, Tammy's asking us to ask the question, how can I interpret this in a way that's going to serve me and in a way that I'm going to grow and become a better person? Because that's the journey of life, is like, how can we become better each day so that we can serve others? So thank you for this question. Okay, so where can we find you? There is anybody here in our audience that needs a relationship coach? I know you and your husband do an amazing job. How can they find you guys?
Thank you. So you can find me at my name, TammyTantilla.com. And during this call, if you hear something that like really feels valuable to you, I would love for you to go there and send me a message and tell me what it is that you found that was valuable. We do individual coaching because sometimes people are in a place where they aren't in a relationship and they would like to be in a relationship, or they're just wanting to spend some time focusing on themselves. We also do relationship coaching, my husband and I. So we work with couples on creating a better relationship. Sometimes they're just needing to take it to the next level, and other times it's at a place where it's like it's time to really look at how we're going to make this even better, right? It's time to make this a priority. And then we also do group coaching. So we work with groups to go over what we call our 10 musts for a thriving relationship. And so we go through that, plus many other really great tools and strategies and distinctions and everything. So we do that in our group coaching. And so at the end of this call, I'll share with you where you can go to get the full list of the 10 must for a thriving relationship, and you can go and get that for that. So we are really passionate about helping people. Here's for me, it's kind of like the bottom line. Our relationships is where we find our greatest joy and our greatest pain. And we want to make sure that the experience that you're having in your life is not the greatest pain, but instead the greatest joy that you deserve. So we hope you'll come and find us on my website, tammytantilla.com, and we'll see what we can do to support you in having an amazing relationship.
Yes, and I will share the link on the description of my YouTube video. So if you guys are enjoying this conversation, if you know of anybody that could benefit from this conversation, you can go to my YouTube channel, Paola Guthrie, and I will make sure to type the website where you can find Tammy Tantilla for more information. I personally know a couple of people that coach with her, and they have an amazing marriage. So go for it, please. So people love the idea of falling in love because we see it on movies. I mean, I love romantic movies. I get into the emotion, you know, and it's like, what is the difference between true love and falling in love?
Well, you know, that's interesting because when there's the process of falling in love, right? Who doesn't love that feeling at the very beginning of a relationship when everything seems new and magical, right?
Yes.
Love that feeling, and it can be pretty addicting to like how that feels, to like what's the new, what's different, and it's what's exciting. So there's a great piece of that. And funny enough, we don't just always have to just fall in love in the beginning. We can do it throughout our whole relationship and marriage if we choose. What happens though is often when we get hooked into the feeling of falling in love, then it puts us in sometimes in a state of mind where we can fall in love with someone's potential. So rather than like really noticing who the person is, we begin to like imagine who we think they are and who we'd like them to be. And maybe if we just tweak them a little bit over here, they could be exactly what I want, right? So we can kind of get to this place where we're not seeing the relationship as clearly because we're so caught up in that feeling of like, I love this feeling of falling in love. And it can pull us away from like, remember what dating was about, was like the discovery process and really evaluating, because we kind of can put on some like rose-colored glasses, as they say. You know, one of the things that I have found is when intimacy comes into a relationship too soon, what can happen is it can kind of cloud our ability to evaluate the situation, because the oxytocin gets released, and then we kind of see things differently than when we're a little bit more objective. And then we choose what we want to see instead of what's like really showing up in front of us. So we want to be really aware if that's kind of what we're doing, because it's well, let me put it this way. There's some great questions you can ask if you're just wanting to notice if you're like maybe in that falling in love stage, as opposed to like really wanting to be in that kind of a full-time like really great relationship. And it's like part of the question is who am I really in this relationship with? Like, who is this person really? Like, start to ask that kind of a question. And are my needs getting met? And is this continually maybe one-sided? And one-sided could be either way, where like all the attention goes to them because I'm in this crazy in love stage, and so I give them all the attention, and that, or maybe I'm demanding all the attention and I'm getting all the attention, and am I really like reciprocating that? Maybe a great question to ask. And is this a pattern that I'm noticing? It's like, oh, here I am in this space in the relationship again. Like I'm starting to notice that this is the pattern that I run. Is I get excited with falling in love, and then when it kind of shifts out of that space, then it's not so fun anymore, and what's next? If that seems to be what your pattern is, then you may want to look at some other questions, which would be like, in that relationship, what does it mean to be in this relationship with this person? Is it about that person? Is it about being in relationship? Like, is it that you're in love with the idea of being in a relationship? So what would it mean if you were not in a relationship? That might be a great question to ask, to kind of start to notice. It's like, Well, no, I have to be in a relationship. I'm always going to be in a relationship. And if this one looks like it's ending, I'm just going to start looking for the next one before this gets over with, right? Like, notice if
Mhm.
that's your pattern. And is it better to be in a bad relationship than in no relationship at all? There are definitely people that kind of fall into that category as well. So some of that can come from that feeling of like, I need to be in a relationship. Being in a relationship is what makes me feel whole, right? Like a part of me's missing if I'm not there. So sometimes that getting caught up in that falling in love piece can kind of start to create some of those scenarios that can happen. And it's just great to bring that back and start to really notice what kind of a relationship I'm in and what kind of pattern am I running.
Yeah, like make sure that it's not you're not in love with the idea of falling in love, because if you're in love with the idea, then you're gonna be trapped in a relationship after a relationship without valuing you, without like the question that you're asking, who am I in this relationship with? And what I've learned here is that once you are comfortable under your skin and he is comfortable under his skin and the life is fun together, then it's whenever you start building that foundation for a beautiful relationship. So yes, thank you
And
for this question. Yeah.
I think it's important that we be careful that we don't let relationships define us, right? So like I need to be in a relationship to be enough, right? So like when we were talking
Okay.
about rejection a little bit ago, with like you said, like preteens and teens, they're at such a young age that they're still having so many outside influences influence what they believe about themselves. And so it can be heavily influenced by outside people. So it's really important to notice who you're dating, who you're spending time with, what you're doing, to make sure that, and there's an easy process that you can go through to help them move through that piece of needing other people's opinion about them to decide if whether they're valued or worthwhile or good enough, right? And it's the same kind of questions we're asking here. It's like, do they have to be in a relationship to be enough? Do they have to be in a relationship to like feel like their life is complete or whole? And what does it mean if they're not? So that's kind of where those can kind of come in there as well.
Yes, very clever, especially for our people right now, our beautiful audience that are dating. They're on that dating stage. Is yeah, don't let a relationship define you. Be comfortable under your own skin with a relationship and without one. So yes. So when it seems that love is not enough, what is?
Well, everyone needs to feel love. It's like one of our basic things, human needs that people need to feel. And everyone needs to feel love. And if they don't feel like they're getting love, then they'll settle for something less, like connection. They'll settle just to connect if they can't get love. So
Okay.
if they feel like they're not getting love from their partner, because it's a need that they have, they'll find it from somewhere else. Maybe they'll get love at their job, or love with their kids, or their grandkids, or maybe it's social media. Like they'll find some place to get that need met because love is an important thing that we all need to feel. It's extremely important. And I think the question really is there not enough love in the relationship, or are there actually stressors that are impacting the love that is in the relationship? So when I say stressors, it's like, I mean, um, like here's our relationship and there's nice, great things that happen in the relationship, but maybe something like they'll do, like, oh, they bought me flowers. Oh, they did, did this nice thing for me. Oh, whatever that is, right? And it kind of builds the relationship and keeps the love. But sometimes the stressor can come along and it seems so big and so looming that it kind of overshadows everything. And it feels like love is not enough because the stressors is just, it's too big or it's too much. And it's important that we discover what those stressors are, the consequences of those stressors, so that we can actually look at those and start to minimize those, right? Because when we first get into a relationship, those stressors don't seem to be there. It's like how we're handling relationship. But as life happens, right? And stressors can be simple things as like, she seems to care a lot more about the kids than she does me, right? It's like I get whatever's left. I'm not a priority in this family. That could feel like a stressor for someone. Maybe it's like A stressor could be they have kids from another relationship, right? And you feel a sense of jealousy, like, that doesn't feel so great. It could be that they don't stand up to their ex, and that doesn't feel great. Maybe they're spending way too much time at work or working, right? Like those are all things that bring stressors to the relationship. Where love was a great foundation, it was great to start with, these stressors start to come and they overshadow that. So it feels like love is not enough. When we take the time to work on those stressors, one, to discover what they are, right? So we talk about how when things become stressful and we don't talk about it, then they expand and get bigger and expand and get bigger. So instead of in the beginning noticing that something's stressing and having a conversation, we kind of stack it, right? So the stressors become bigger and bigger, and that can be a really big challenge. Another really big stressor is when our values are not in alignment. So I mentioned values before, but when our values, it's not that they have to be the same, they just need to be in alignment. And so when someone asks you to do something that's outside of your core value, it really feels like they're asking you to not be true to yourself. And it can be like, let's just say, when something that's really important to me is certainty. I just want routine, and I want things to be like come certain. I want to know that this is how it's going to be, and I want to do the plan and work the plan. And that's really an important value to me. But my partner, oh my gosh, they love variety, they love surprise, they love doing things different. Right? Like they're different enough values that it starts to create stress and friction. It's like, why are you always doing that? Or why does it always have to be like this, right? It's like, that's where one of those stressors where values are not in alignment that can cause some challenges. So those are going to be those stressors where it feels like I truly love this person, but I don't know that I feel that like love's enough to sacrifice who I am at my core to try to like make this work, So because they're actually don't connect very well. And that's why that's why it's important when we're dating that we start to discover those things. We want to know what those values are so that we don't get to this point where it's like, how did I not know that this was important to them? Right? We want to discover in that dating stage.
Yeah. So if any of you are in this stage of your relationship, like you feel like a lot of stressors are happening right now in your relationship, then begin to wonder, what are the stressors that are happening right now? And what are the damages? What are the consequences of these stressors? And sit down with your significant other and align those values. Begin to see, okay, how do this is looking like? How do we want it to look like in 6 months? How do we want it to look like in a year? To work towards that relationship, the foundation, so that you can continue to build stronger bonds. So thank you, Tammy. So how do we build, here we go, how do we build a thriving relationship in a marriage? Values.
So what's great is we have created that list of 10 musts for a thriving relationship. And I'm going to cover 3 of them really quickly right now. So the first one is to be grateful. I think that is like such a foundational piece. And I often share this metaphor that when you first get in a relationship and they take out the garbage and you're like, oh my gosh, you took out the garbage. So thoughtful. Thank you so much, right? And then 3 years into the relationship, you're like, oh my gosh, can you not smell that thing stinks? Are you ever going to take it out? And it switches over to an expectation. And we've all been on the other side of expectations, and we know how that feels. And it doesn't feel great to be expected to do all these things without really any appreciation. So number one thing, one of the main things to be able to have a thriving, great relationship is to make sure that you look to have gratitude in your life and appreciate as many things as you can. There's always something to appreciate, and it's looking for what that is and acknowledging, appreciating, staying in that space. The second thing I'm going to call quality listening. Quality listening. So it's quality listening is when we listen to understand and appreciate. So it starts with being curious. So you're really curious about like what's going on. Often what people will do is a person speaking and they go, oh, well, I don't know about that. I think that like this and that. I'm going to tell them that that's probably, and they start going off into this dialogue, right? And the person communicating can feel that they've withdrawn and they're in their head and they're thinking of what they're going to respond and they're no longer listening. And it's really common. A lot of us can find ourselves doing that at times, right? And it takes, so when we respond, they don't have as receptive a response because they realize you weren't really listening, that you had stopped at some point listening. So quality listening is something that we constantly work on. We're listening to appreciate and understand them. And we come from this place that's like, when we know that we've listened first, we can just trust that we're going to have the right response instead of trying to, well, I'm going to say this, I'm going to do that. It's like pull yourself back in, stay present, and listen to understand and appreciate what they're sharing with you. And they'll feel honored. There may be nothing to even fix, right? There may be nothing that needs to be even, just sometimes just that sharing and feeling heard can solve the challenge for the person, right? They just feel, gosh, they feel so cared for. And like when you're so present with them. So quality listening. And the third thing are rituals that we do for ourselves and that we do together. So a quick example of a ritual that I would probably do for myself is when I first wake up in the morning and I open my eyes, rather than going, okay, so what needs to get done today? I need to make sure that happens. I got to get that call. Got to get this happen, right? Start planning my day. If I stop and I go, what is like 5 things that I love about my partner? Like, what are 5 things that, yesterday, he brought me flowers for Valentine's Day. And you know what? He was kind enough to bring me a snack when I was working. And you know what else I love about my partner is I love how he sings and whistles and how happy, and I'm thinking, what did he do recently that I love about him? And then I'm much more inclined to share that with him, which starts that whole changing how that works. And maybe I'm going to ask myself the question after I think of those 5 things, what can I do today to make sure that he knows how much I love him? How can I fill up his love tank or show him that I love him? Like, what would be a good thing? And I think about it in advance and I take the time. And it's a ritual I do each day. So I make sure it stays as a part of my priority and my focus. Together, a ritual might be like going on a date, right? People often do the date nights, or maybe it's a ritual that's just like once a week, we spend 1 hour where we just are totally present in conversation, no cell phones, no interruptions, just the 2 of us in conversation, right? So that could be a ritual you could set together that would help the 2 of you make sure that you're consistently staying together. So it's being grateful, quality listening, some powerful rituals.
This is like, yes. I mean, it's like 3 simple steps, grateful, gratitude is like, one of my biggest aha moments in my marriage is whenever I went to date with Destiny. And I learned that my creator had created my husband. It was an aha moment for me that I've never truly paid attention to it. I was like, oh, I'm trying to choke someone God created. So it was like, I know it sounds silly, but it was the moment where I was like, oh, wow. It was like God created him. And I was like, okay, what are the awesome things that he has? And I began in that journey of trying to find, his awesomeness. And sometimes in our marriage, we get trapped into our everyday life. And sometimes we tend to see what I am doing and how much I'm doing at home. And then we tend to see where it's like, well, he's not helping me enough. And then you get into that, that stage, because I've been there and I've learned to, get out of that stage because it won't take us to the next level. And that's what we want for our children. So, but that would be for another show. Maybe you can come back. I'm trying to do a show for forgiveness, a month up for forgiveness in April. So I'll might message you and see if you have good content to help us work in that area of our life to learn to forgive more. But
Really important.
so how do we rekindle a relationship that it's
that's not working so well?
Yes.
First of all, both people need to want to do that. So often I end up working with one of the people of the couple, and the other person's not participating. And so it can be kind of challenging because we don't know if what they're doing is working or how it's happening. To rekindle a relationship, you both need to decide that that's what you want, and you're willing to do what it takes to make that happen, because it takes time, it takes energy, it takes focus, it takes resources, and you need to be willing to invest that in making sure that the relationship comes back to where it started, to like what it is, why you got into all of that. And there's certain things that can happen that create the challenge. One, right? I was mentioning before about the stacking. I call them like a pancake stack. It's those uncommunicated challenges that happen that we keep stacking, and then we're communicating through this like, I'm so dang frustrated, right? So that's one of the things that can happen, and it's lowering that stack. It's like looking at each of those things and saying, creating a place to communicate. So one of the really great communication tools, and it's part of our top 10 musts as well, is open and honest, safe communication. So it's important that we're able to communicate in a place that's open, that there's the space to be able to say what's true for me, and not in an unkind way, right? So being honest with that is telling you my truth, but doing it in a way that's kind, in a way that not brutal and harsh and all that kind of stuff, but in a kind way. So when I'm open and I begin to communicate openly what's going on for me, and I'm doing it from a truthful place, and I do it from a kind place, and I know that it's safe to do so. So sometimes what's happened in the past, and a lot of times when there's challenges in relationships, I told you how I felt and I got punished. Right? So then this punishment, like this fear that like I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be criticized, I'm going to be like, it's not safe to tell you how I really feel. That's what starts those stacks, right? Doesn't feel safe to tell you how I feel or what's really going on. So it's committing to open, honest, and safe communication. And when you've committed to that and you are thankful, right? It's like maybe they tell you something you don't want to hear, but it's like noticing what's their intention behind it. Maybe it's to help me notice a blind spot. Maybe it's to help me be aware of something that I wasn't even aware of. And when I can appreciate that and come from a place of like, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for being open with me. I'm glad I can always count on you for that. It starts to help that stack come down. And when that stack comes down, it starts to lessen the intensity, the energy, the stuff that came from that, because typically both people have those stacks, right? And it's like, it doesn't feel great. And so those are a couple of the things, again, coming from a place of gratitude, right? We can get really critical when a relationship's not working. And it's coming back to that place of gratitude of, if nothing else, they're still here, right? So if I can't find anything else to be grateful for, they're still here and they're still in, right? They haven't left the relationship. So they obviously, I can take that assumption that they want it to work, but let's communicate that we both want this to work, that we want to make this relationship work. We're going to do the work to make that happen. And when we do that and we communicate from a great place, it makes it so that they don't, because here's what happens often. What will happen is there's a lot of, when relationships aren't working, there's a lot of blame, and then someone kind of feeling like the victim, right? Oh, you're right, all my fault. Yep, it's all me. I'm the one that did it all, right? That totally shuts down communication. Or like, you're the one that did this, or you're the one that did that. It's like, oh my gosh, right? Those kind of energies can really create havoc and keep the relationship not working. So to rekindle it, it's one, making sure that you have that great committed to open, honest, and safe communication. It's not making assumptions that they should read your mind and know how you think and what, I shouldn't even have this stack. They should know all this about me, right? That can definitely cause challenges in relationships. And then getting upset about it, right? Now I'm going to take it personally. Whoa, like, you should have known that I wanted this and you didn't do it, so you obviously don't care. Like all those stories that come from that. So when we create that safe place and they can come in and they can communicate openly and honestly, then you can start to lower those stacks. And when that stack comes down, it's really much easier to be grateful because you get to see who the person really is. It's almost like they're behind the stack. When the stack lowers, you get to remember who you chose to be in a relationship with.
I love it. Yes. And sometimes, because you took me back to my first years of marriage. It'll be 19 this year. So at the very beginning, it was like retribution. Well, you said this about me, and you didn't like that. That you will keep it in your head, but I did not know that it was part of my human needs in my psychology to have that connection of what he said, to feel needed for significance, where it's like, no, I'm right, he's wrong. The certainty, and how many of our people might be going through that. It's like whenever we blame, it's because there is pain, and it comes from a place where whenever we blame, then we feel more important, and it somehow is like we get a hold of significance. If that's the only thing we know how to do, we blame, but it's not going to mature and nurture a relationship. So here comes a time where we have to have common ground and decide, what do I want? If I want a good relationship, is like, I have to grow up. I have to let go of the resentment. I have to learn to forgive. I have to learn to see the beauty within him, what all he has brought to the relationship. How am I a better person because he's in my life? And anyway, so you're gonna have to come back, Tim. You please come back for April, and teach us how to learn to forgive, because sometimes we get a hold of that resentment, and it's not letting our relationship to grow stronger. And I'm gonna ask one more question because they haven't stopped the show yet, but it's like, what are some of the tips for fostering better communication? And this is a question from LinkedIn. So before they tell me it's time to go.
I will share with you really quickly. So for better communication it's again, open, honest, and safe communication. It's honoring their intention. So it's not, whenever they do something, we assume that they always have a positive intent. And then it's really listening, like I was talking about the listening, because relationships are like flowers, right? They need constant sun and water, and we have to focus on our relationships all the time. If we just like put it as passive, then we'll end up in challenges, right? So if you look at your relationship as like a flower that needs water and sun and your love, then it will grow.
Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I appreciate you. So I'm going to message you later to see if you can join us for a show in April to teach us about forgiveness in our relationship. So much appreciated.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. If they go to tammytantilla.com/PAO, they will get that free, the top 10 musts for a thriving relationship.
Awesome. I'll make sure to post it on my YouTube channel. So please go to my YouTube channel here in just a little bit, and you'll find it there. Thank you all so much for being here with us and listening to us. Remember that you are the ones who give power to your talents, and you're the only one that can give life to your dreams. This show can also be heard on Spanglish World Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Blessings to you all, and we'll see you soon. Happy Valentine's to everyone.
Thank you.